Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pivoted Success Podcast, hosted by Sean Cochran from TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events. Today, we're pleased to be joined by Robin Chiponski from You Can't Do That Productions. Robin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me to be on the podcast.
Great. Well, Robin, let's talk a little bit about your background. Who are you and what's You Can't Do That Productions all about?
Well, I'm actually a retired federal public servant. I had a almost 30-year career in the public service, working on some really hot files. I was kind of the change management guru, make the magic happen kind of employee. They don't really have a job description for that kind of thing. But if there was a problem to be solved, I was usually on the team, if not leading it. And I actually ended up retiring because of a car accident. And after recovering from the car accident, I was looking around, okay, like I'm not dead. My brain is still functioning fairly well. And I had lots of ideas and dreams, that I kind of put off to the side while I was busy solving problems for the nation. But I had other dreams, like more personal to my heart, that I wanted to pursue. And then by happenstance, I was introduced to Roger Price. Now, Roger Price isn't necessarily a well-known individual himself, but the show that he created, wrote, produced here in Ottawa in the late 70s and early 80s is known around the world. And that, of course, is the namesake of our company. You can't do that on television. Now, Roger Roger is now 80 years old, but he remains a prolific writer. And we joined forces with some local kids and some local families to start, making new videos, and some of those are up on YouTube. But it really introduced me to the power of communicating through video, through media, and that sort of thing. So I'd always been interested and curious. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes gal, but with working with Roger, we started developing different projects. He probably has about 8 or 9 scripts that we're working on. And just before COVID started, we started a training program with kids. But then COVID happened.
And what happened then?
Well, we had, as I said, started up this training program with kids, local kids, and we had quite a business plan developed and things like that. But Roger, as an older individual, and especially when we were just in the initial steps of COVID and didn't understand what its impact was, particularly on people of greater age, we decided we just couldn't risk Roger being part of that program. And so after only 2 or 3 months of running, we had to shut down. And we did not feel comfortable moving online at that particular time. And so we just shut it down, period, and kind of, licked our wounds while we tried to figure out what was next. So for us, that opened up a period of time where we really focused on learning new ways of communicating, particularly in digital media and social media and that type of thing. For an older individual, Roger is actually very exceptionally savvy about social media and what works and what doesn't. And so we went about learning more about this. We did courses, we did workshops. We used the time to kind of retool and reskill ourselves. And once we got a little bit more comfortable with new formats, and we had periodic openings when we could actually get together in person, a friend of mine, Marilyn Reed, who is another well-known entity in the Ottawa area. Marilyn Reed started her career as a CBC journalist. She worked for the Canadian Press. She's been, a television producer for quite a number of years, and she's in her 70s. I'm in my 50s. We got together and we were talking about our dissatisfaction with how media, information, magazines, any kind of interface with specific demographics, we're really ignoring our demographic, and we weren't really too happy about that. I
So
think that
talking about, because of the COVID situation, you're discussing and brainstorming, not being able to be catered to, you said that demographic, you're talking about the senior demographic?
yeah, so we define our demographic as basically 50 and up. And we are focused primarily on females because despite whatever income or income position we may be in, because we cover the whole range, we are often the primary decision maker or a big influencer in purchasing decisions for families and households. So, we think that there should have been a little bit more information um, geared towards our demographic because we feel that we can disappear from society a little bit when we get into this age group. Like men will age gracefully and continue to work until they drop. But women, kind of disappear into the woodwork at a certain point. And that felt wrong to us. And so Marilyn and I decided that we were going to try and do something about that. And so the COVID period actually gave us a wonderful period to plan.
And so
And that's what we
how
did.
have you pivoted? How have you and Marilyn and perhaps some of your other colleagues adapted and adjusted to create this new initiative?
Well, we adapted by embracing technology. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Technology is not my favorite thing. I rely very heavily on my husband to bail me and my teenage daughter to bail me out of circumstances now and then. But COVID made us realize we had to get comfortable with Zoom. We had to get comfortable with FaceTime. We had to get comfortable with being on front of a camera. Both Marilyn and I are behind the scenes people, so putting ourselves out there, even just on Zoom conversations and things like that, was a bit of a learning curve. And so once we started to embrace the technology and better understand it, we then realized that we didn't have to rely on large production sets or elaborate infrastructure with multiple players. We could do a lot between just ourselves and our family. And that was the great revelation for us as a result of the COVID experience.
So did you offer training to help other seniors learn about technology, or you became more proficient at it to what end?
So we focused mainly on our own skills because we wanted to make the connection or be the connector between interesting individuals, businesses, and organizations and our audience. And we've only been on air, well, on social media, a total of, this is our third week, and this is our second week of episodes. We've had a tremendous response. I'll admit we were a little nervous for if we were going to get a good response, but the feedback and response have been overwhelmingly positive. And a lot of times the response that we get from our viewers is, oh my God, thank you for recognizing that we are an underserved market, that we deserve information, that we matter, and we're part of the economy. So, pay attention to us. And as a result, a lot of our episodes have been paying attention to topics of interest, but we've also used our episodes as an opportunity to highlight incredible entrepreneurs that in our demographics that are making a difference in their industry. Often they're still at the top of their game in terms of performing those jobs or interests, whatever it is that they have. But we find them very inspirational because what they have achieved, what we refer to as seniority, hence the show. They have wisdom, they have experience, they matter, and they're damn good at what they do.
So Robin, reaching out that market who have been there, they're doing it, they've been doing it for years, they're an expert at their industry, the decision makers. If your market is that demographic, Are many of them social media savvy enough to view your channels? Like, how have you identified which channels to focus on for that demographic?
So we started off with Facebook because it is a platform for, or known as a platform for an older demographic. They tend to favor. We did also connect into Instagram, but our stats already show that it's a fraction of what we're getting on Facebook. And then, of course, there are people who have very strong views about Facebook. And so for those viewers, we also are on YouTube. And between Facebook and YouTube, we haven't really found anybody who's had any difficulty connecting with us and watching us. I think most of our posts and episodes run from anywhere from about 400 to 700 views in a couple weeks.
Wow, that's incredible. It's nice to see that response so quickly. And I find, especially with social media and stuff like that, it sort of snowballs. So hopefully that's just the beginnings of what you're about to see. But I love the demographic that you guys are looking after, because I think you're very, very right, and that it's often underserved, especially among retirees who feel just sort of left in the ether, right? Once that they've got out of that sort of 9-to-5 general thing. But what I'd like to think of COVID, I mean, obviously everybody was sort of pushed to get a little bit more technologically savvy, whether that was just as simply as checking Facebook and things like that. So I think your timing for this is incredible, because I think everybody's on sort of the upswoop of their technological journey, no matter what age they are. So I think a lot of people have been pushed into their uncomfortable zone with that. So I'd love to see how much response people are sort of jumping in on that, because I think that's you're at I think a perfect time for that in your demographic.
We do too, and it's like I said, I don't think we've received any kind of feedback from anybody. And trust me, people will give you the negative feedback, because I've already been told, like I said, Marilyn and I are not in front of the camera type of people typically, so we're putting ourselves out there and trying to squash any kinds of feelings of anxiety about it. But graciously, people in our community are also stepping up and saying, okay, ladies, we're going to help you with your makeup. Okay, ladies, we're going to help you connect with this. And that's exactly the type of reaction that we were hoping to get from our communities. And we also have consciously decided to show warts and all. The fact that our productions aren't slick to begin with, we're getting better. We're learning every single day. And, our intention is just to get better and better. But we think being open about our journey really lends to our credibility and convincing viewers that we are, in fact, authentic.
Well,
absolutely. And it brings everybody to your journey, right? So they get to participate in it instead of just seeing the final finished sort of touches of it all. It's nice to see everything that's real, especially nowadays where so much of everything is just a facade on top of a facade, right? So I think that's amazing for sure. So you mentioned how you sort of professionally were affected by COVID. How were things for you personally? If we were to go back to that middle of March sort of D-Day, so to speak, of the beginning of this all.
Well, as an introvert, I was okay with the first lockdown. Okay, I don't think I actually personally struggled until the third lockdown. So lockdown 1 and 2, I was okay. I, was with my family. By the grace of technology, I remained connected to the people I needed to remain connected to. But it also allowed, more importantly, a period of reflection about what really are my business priorities, what are my personal priorities. And I started shutting things down that no longer served, either of those goals. And I really stripped my life down to the key and most important aspects of what I hope to accomplish for myself and for my family.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think a lot of people have had that sort of self-inflection a little bit over this. And it's nice to sort of prioritize what it is that you want, especially for your demographic. I think, again, it's nice to help reconnect people now, because I know this is dragging on a bit longer than anybody had anticipated, but people are ready to reconnect. And if that's virtually online, that's great. Better that than not at all, right?
hmm And my daughter, had a few extracurricular programs that she continued to do virtually, and we even pivoted to doing our fundraising online. We had trivia nights online. We had social gatherings online. Christmas, my family spent virtually. A lot of my family's out west, so we got on Zoom. Even my aged mother got on the Zoom technology, and we spent Christmas together. And it wasn't quite what it was, but it's still, after being separated from everybody for so long, it was very special.
This reminds me of you were talking about the community engagement. The reason why you're getting all these hits on YouTube is because people can see and they can relate. The community engagement's everything. Everybody has to, well, not only buy in, but believe what you're doing, promoting, selling widgets, services, whatever. And it's always a hard time to get your message across to your demographic. And so, short of making posts on Facebook and maybe Instagram, do you have newsletters that you send out, like word of mouth mostly? Like, I'm just trying to understand, because I'm trying to relate it to ourselves, right? We have almost 700 videos on YouTube about entrepreneurship and networking, but nobody knows about them.
It is a challenge. So Marilyn and I both have fairly robust networks as a result of our professional careers. And they were the first communities we tapped when, we went online. Well, actually, even before we went online, and said, we used our community to say, okay, what would be really meaningful for you? Like, what would actually help you get online or make you want to get online and watch us? So we used our communities as informal networking. And then, we started connecting with businesses and consultants and experts who are doing really interesting things of interest to our community. So we, through those partnerships, through those collaborations, the word is spreading organically. We are going to ramp up our next step. We will do some advertising. We'll do some more heavy marketing. We do have a newsletter. It's on our website, www.theseniorityshow.com. And, it's one of the reasons why I'm here with you guys today, is because I didn't know you had 700 videos, but I know there's a wealth of information here as well that I'm hoping to leverage, for the benefit of what Marilyn and I are trying to do.
Sure. And now let's talk about what you've observed. So, Robin, what have you observed? How has entrepreneurship changed during COVID? Are you able to speak to it perhaps with that your marketed demographic?
I find this demographic very collaborative. And that might be a bit of a reflection about how women in general, because don't forget, we're talking women 50s and up, and gender identity wasn't as big of an opportunity for our demographics as it is for younger demographics today. So most of us have been traditionally raised as females, and that automatically brings a certain amount of socialization. We're raised to be social, to talk to each other, to go to each other for information. It doesn't mean that, I'm going to listen to everything my mother tells me, but I will take out the wonderful gems, that people I know have to offer, and the things that I feel that apply to me. So there is an innate source of communication and sharing already built into our demographic. Now, what gets in the way of that are things like personal fears, bad experiences, pushy salespeople, people trying to, not being authentic and genuine, because, some of the feedback I've had from women is that, a great of an opportunity technology has brought to us, it gets very hard to discern what's real and what's fake. And, so having somebody out there verifying, validating something, erases a bit of that worry and that concern. But it still exists. You know,
Yeah.
like even when I buy on Amazon today, yes, I buy on Amazon, you know, I'll look at a product and I have to wonder, is that counterfeit? Because I don't know what I'm getting. And counterfeit products are very pervasive in the market. And, you know, so I think it's in some ways it's harder for entrepreneurs now than it was before, because the degree of misinformation, the degree of fraud, you know, through counterfeit products, I think makes it a much tougher job for entrepreneurs today, especially if they're trying to compete on an online platform.
Yeah, you talked about many topics: relationships, trust, authenticity, and it's always a hard way to build that through networking, right? The relationships, that is everything. I mean, we could talk
Mm-hmm.
hours about this stuff. It's my favorite subject, but we're here to talk more about you, Robin. Um, oh, I wish we could have another segment just talking about that. But what are you most excited about? Let's say 6 months or a year down the road. We know that you've recently
Mm-hmm.
launched your new initiative. Where do you think it's going to be, or where yourself will be in 6 months or a year from now?
Well, 6 months to a year from now, we want to be positioned as a critical gateway to women 50 and up. You know, we want to provide that filter for people, you know, and their verification and their understanding, and their connection to resources that they may not have even ever dreamt about. Like, for example, our first episode was with Gigi Delorier. And Gigi is in her 60s. She is a personal trainer of personal trainers. And she is probably one of the most successful trainers in the city. You know, she's in her 60s. Did you catch that part? And she is so inspirational and so amazing. And so my gift or my motivation for our audience was to expose them to what Gigi has to offer and the advice and knowledge that she brings. And if that brings Gigi some business to her doorstep, so much the better. It's a win-win for everyone. And given that our audience is almost coast to coast and beyond, we have viewers in the UK. You know, this now exposes people like Gigi to a much broader market than she might not have otherwise had, even though she does have a tremendous online presence.
That's a
But
really important point, because with COVID and the need for virtual for everybody in the planet almost, the reach is so much larger than just your
mhm,
little community or your town, for that matter.
mhm. We did a fashion show about, you know, how to dress attractively without trying to look like a teenager, and it was, you know, that particular store sells coast to coast. And I know that some of my family and friends who watched or who I told about the upcoming episode were like, you know, I've never heard of that store. So by virtue of our blogcast, we're going to expose that store to even a greater audience around the world. And I think that's a pretty good deal for both parties. And I think that is the key now to making a successful relationship and a successful partnership. There has to be balanced value added for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so nice to show those success stories too, especially for people that are feeling unsure potentially of themselves. Well, maybe I don't have it in me after my career, all these things. And that's sad, because it's really those inspirational stories that can help people realize that they can do whatever it is they want within reason, right? So
And like, for example, with Gigi, like, she started talking about what's important to look for in a trainer. And because she has that experience, that seniority under her belt, you know, she can kind of cut through all the rhetoric and go directly to the point and say, look, your exercise regime is not going to work unless you are doing this, 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 and this. And it's very, very straightforward, very basic, but she just cuts your learning curve in half because of that experience and wisdom. And, you know, our guest this week is Terry Gentis, and Terry is, you know, an amazing individual. Like, you just want to, like, hug her as soon as you meet her because she just makes you feel so warm and positive inside, which is also another thing, I think that we're trying to do with our program is we have enough things that hurt us or make us feel bad about ourselves. Let's focus on the things that make us feel good about ourselves.
That's a great way to look at it. Absolutely. Because if you look at the news, it's scary, it's sad, it could be very intimidating for most. But let's showcase the positivity. So I love that. That's brilliant, Robin. Let's put your business hat off to the side for a bit and put your personal future on the line. So outside of the work, what does your personal future hold?
I feel that I'm now in a part of my life where I have survived the wars. I have survived and benefited from so many life experiences that I'm finally in a place now where I can pursue all those other ideas and interests that I couldn't while I walked into a career that had one very specific focus. And, I think that is the blessing of being an individual or an entrepreneur is that you get to exercise if you plan it well enough and to some extent luck and opportunity lands in front of you. There is a lot of satisfaction that I'm able to bring to my life now by doing and acting on projects that are very personal to me. And you have to remember, being a public servant at heart, I'm not like a typical entrepreneur. I guess I would call myself a social entrepreneur because I'm not necessarily motivated by money. I am motivated by impact.
That's great to hear too, because again, it brings back to the previous conversation about authenticity and all that sort of stuff. And if you start off doing things for the wrong reasons, then your authenticity is likely going to suffer at that hand as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for us, one of the
exactly.
No, I was just going to say one of the big things for us is always trying to connect everybody in the community and look to what we can do to help. So looking at our audience and anybody else we can sort of bring your way, what can our community and the community in general do to help you in this amazing effort?
Well, we welcome partnerships with people. Like if there are, stories, if there are services, if there are products that are meaningful to our community, we'd love to partner with you and work on an episode. We'd like to work with people whose values are aligned with ours and who also want to bring some attention and power to this demographic. And we have a term that we've coined, and we want to work with people who are going to build the seniority revolution with us, because we're not sitting at the back of the auditorium anymore. We want the front seats. And if there are organizations, businesses, individuals who share a similar goal, a similar philosophy, we'd like to get together and help each other achieve our goals.
Excellent. It's that collaborative nature that I find really helps organizations, individuals, businesses stay in business. And this is only the beginning of this initiative for you. I understand you just recently launched. Hopefully we'll have a chance to interview in a year from now, and we'll see how much more of a global impact you and your colleagues have had. It's going to be quite interesting. So we're almost near the end now, Robin. Would you happen to care to share some words of wisdom for others as it relates to, ideally our market, our entrepreneurs and small business owners, on how they can adapt to COVID?
So I think that COVID has highlighted a lot of areas where we need to either rethink or approach in a totally different direction, or perhaps even stop doing. And I think that this is an opportunity to really get focused about what your value added is, because I've learned through COVID that trying to be everything to everyone leads to nowhere, right? And if you have specific goals, use the time to reflect and to think about it and really focus down and narrow your activities and where you're putting your energy, because it doesn't go anywhere. It was the same for policy. If you try to do 100 things, you're only going to move an inch in 100 files. But if you focus on 1 or 2 files, you can go the distance. It's the same thing, I think, for entrepreneurs. And so in addition to that really focused energy, I think the other point that you mentioned, Jared, about collaboration, be open. Don't worry so much about the competitors. Yes, take practices to protect your intellectual property, your ideas, some of your trade secrets, but be open to collaboration, because things don't happen without relationships.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's all very, very true. And I think those organization individuals who have accepted and embraced the collaborative nature of the community will end up farther ahead than those who are more territorial and tend to view everyone else as competition.
That's right. And, the opportunities that come from that collaboration, like, would I be here with you guys today if not for that philosophy?
No, absolutely not. And you know what? It's even, it's on my banners. It says collaboration. So this is right up my alley.
We went to the same school, Jared.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Sean, is there anything else you'd like to ask her?
No, that was great. Thanks so much for joining us. And I have to admit that as soon as I saw that You Can't Do That productions, I got a little bit excited, because childhood me absolutely loved the You Can't Do That on television franchise. So.
Well, and it's not dead. Let me tell you that, because Roger has written a bit of a reboot. He's written a couple of screenplays, and we are shopping the idea around. So,
well, I'm very excited for that. So,
yeah. Well, maybe I'll come back next time and talk about that one too.
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
So, Robin, how can somebody get in touch with you, please?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I put my LinkedIn profile, my website, my online information into my profile here. But the easiest way is Robin Chiponski, one word, @gmail.com.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Robin. So today, folks, we were joined by Robin Chiponski from You Can't Do That Productions on the Pivoted Success podcast, hosted by Sean Cochran from TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events. Robin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.